Hi, this is Curt, and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
What's next? Let's go. This is easier, but it's kind of humorous in some sense. Let's go to Somerville, Mass, place I know pretty well. Here, so an individual, a female who's a veteran of the military. I'm not going to say decorated, but she's definitely been sent to some hostile places. She applied for and was denied a position as a reserve firefighter in Somerville, Virginia. Can you explain? I'm not familiar with that term, reserve firefighter. Is that like
I'm not either. No, it's not a normal thing, but again, I'm not sure that just means they're not assigned to a shift and or they're per diem, or I'm not sure what it means. So, okay. But that's what they said in the complaint or in the decision. It was reserve firefighter. So I left that end alone.
Okay. So her allegation here, and I'll give you some of the facts. I thought the administrative agency did a good job. The commission did a good job, but she was denied the position. It was given to someone else, a male, I believe. And she alleged that she's being discriminated against because there's a bias against veterans, which you better be careful who you make that claim against, as we see in a moment. And she said there's no reasonable basis for their decision. So what happens here is she filled out an application and constantly didn't answer or gave vague or non-responsive answers. And the commission says, there's so much of this that there's far too much to overlook. This wasn't like one you didn't answer fully. And when she was asked for clarification, she gave really vague, strange answers, right? And I thought one of them was kind of interesting. So there was a series of questions that pertained whether you were in a previous, if you were in a previous public safety position, and whether she's been investigated for excessive force, right? Which makes sense. You might, as we get to Miami, that's probably a good question.
Yeah, and especially if the same questions are asked of police officers as well,
which probably is right. And again, as we're going to see shortly in Miami, or Florida, it's probably a good question, but nonetheless. And she says in response to, have you ever been investigated or involved in, an incident for excessive force? She says, well, something like, a crane operating at a construction site, that's a public safety position, and failure to properly handle the crane could result in excessive force if it hits something. At this point, you're thinking this applicant, this individual, is either crazy or hiding something.
Yeah, she gave that during her oral interview, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So
weird, right? I mean, just weird. So she failed to answer several questions. She failed to talk about discipline. They found that she was not being forthcoming and truthful when she was asked if she ever was disciplined, because she found she was put on academic probation at a college. She came up with an excuse for why she was on academic probation, saying, I was working this other job. But then they found that wasn't actually true, because she wasn't working the other job at that time. So in short, the commission held, because she was not forthcoming and not overly truthful, they found the department was correct in not hiring and passing her up. Mm-hmm. Now, there was one more interesting thing. She claimed there was bias against veterans. I don't even know where you'd come out with that based on what happened, but nonetheless, the assistant chief who's on the hiring panel is a veteran himself. So that's kind of like alleging Clarence Thomas is a racist, which people have done. Nonetheless, that's it. I think the lesson to me in this is, if you have there must have been a good record kept here, and write good notes as to her answers to oral questions and interview questions. And obviously they kept her application, and they did pretty good background check. Somebody, whether it's the commission or the department, one of them did pretty good background checks on her to find out some of her statements were not true. If you are right, this is the point. Don't worry about being accused of things. Don't worry about being sued. Don't worry about somebody fighting it, right? Because that's what certain people do. You can't stop that. Everyone thinks they're right and nobody else is, everyone else is to blame. But if you have good facts and you have good documentation of those facts, stand your ground, which is what they did. And they were right here.
That's why I like to include cases like this for that very reason, because it's sort of a blueprint for what sort of documentation is a department going to be required to maintain in order to prevail in a case like this. And it's a sort of a textbook example of when you decide you've got somebody who's number one or next on the list and you're going to bypass them. What sort of documentation do you need? Here's the blueprint.
Yep. And, we've seen the opposite. We've seen cases like, well, you're female and there's so many males here. We don't want to put you in that position, so we're not going to promote you, or, stupid things like that. But that's not what this is, right? I mean, this is a well-documented case. So I think all good here.